It's all going good.
His kids are expensive.
Sounds like it.
Yeah. There's 14 yesterday.
Okay.
I tell you, they act like money.
But she's working two jobs.
They're like, girl,
He
please.
hasn't asked.
And they don't want to work.
Out there.
Yeah, we're 7 and 9. I'm trying to get it back.
Charlie, I don't know what you
Yeah,
did with this agenda,
struggling.
but
Yes.
I'm liking it.
I didn't know.
January. I already understand.
Yeah. No, because that's gonna interfere where I'm like.
January.
Mom.
January should be a big agenda.
Busier or just?
Y'all know. Eat dinner first in January, because we'll have a long agenda.
Oh, God, please don't say that.
Ladies and gentlemen, we welcome you to this December 18th, 2024 meeting of the City of Charleston Planning Commission. My name is Charlie Carrish. I'm chairman of the commission. I'm joined by commission members, Vice Chairman Howard Mustaine. From my left, Steve Hirsch. It's his first official meeting. He was here last month, but he didn't sit in with us, so welcome again.
Thank you.
Peter Bryant Jenkins, Jimmy Bailey, and I said Howard Mustaine. McKenna Joyce. These folks are volunteers for the city, appointed by Charleston City Council. And I know you thank them and for their work on behalf of the city. I also like to acknowledge acknowledge Donna Jacobs, who's a longtime member of this commission, and thank her for her work. And hopefully we've got something, I think, Christopher, coming up at City Council this month. I call it the Jacobs Amendment. The city calls it that, where it's
You will officially now have alternates for the planning commission. So
We
now
do. Has that been passed?
That passed
okay,
last
so
time.
then she just has to be
City
appointed.
council. And the
Okay,
appointment will come next.
so hopefully Ms. Jacobs will be joining us again soon, and we look forward to seeing you. So thank you, and as always. The way the meeting worked tonight is I'll read an item from the agenda into the record. We'll then hear from staff and any recommendation they have, and then hear from the applicant. And anyone who's in support of the application, anyone who may be in not support of the application, then we'll let the applicant have the final word. I don't see a ton of people here today, so I don't know if that's gonna be the issue, but then we'll close the public aspect of that, and city and commission members will discuss and vote on. If you get up to speak tonight, I'd ask you to come to the podium, tell us who you are, and if you're representing someone and where you live. If you have a cell phone, I'd ask you also to turn it on silent or turn it off. Mr. Morgan, is there any other changes to the agenda?
So your subdivision request has been deferred. That's the Maybank Landing. And then Molly, 1761.
1761 Savage Road, the #1 zoning, we will need to defer.
Well, if you don't like that, but it's all.
You know, look, is a choice by staff.
And we have, we don't have a big agenda tonight. We do have a presentation, which is gonna be very good. But we'll go right into it. Anything else? So you want to introduce staff that's participating?
Sure. Christopher Morgan, planning manager, Eric Coleman, our West Edge League coordinator, Philip Clapper, our clerk, Molly Connor, our annexation coordinator, who's going to do the zonings, and Amanda Cox, who is our planner for the planning commission, and Phil Coopercash.
Great. Thank you all for your work. So the first item on the agenda is minutes. And since Ms. Jacobs can't,
Can we look to you?
I hope some other commission members have read the minutes, and if so, can I get a motion to accept the minutes as sent out?
I make a motion.
I'll
Ms.
second.
Brian Jenkins, seconded by
One of us.
Ms.
Take a
Bailey, okay. So motion by Peter Brian Jenkins, second by Jimmy Bailey to pass the minutes from the previous meeting. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor, none opposed. Next item, since #1 subdivision is deferred, is zonings. And #1 is deferred. So #2, can we take any of these together, Ms. Muller?
You can take 2 through 5 together if you'd like.
2 to 5 together. Okay, so I'm gonna read them into the record. #2 is 1338. This will be a very quick meeting. 1338 Vine Street, West Dash TMS number 418050000. 57.28 acres, and all of these would be the same, I believe. They were R4 in Charleston County, looking at SR1 in the city. So those all would be the same. The next one is 2132 Edisto Avenue, TMS number 343 03-00051.15 acres. Number 4 is 2452 Lantern Street, West Ashley, TMS number 3100600068.23 acres. And number 5 is 1429 Alma Street, a portion. West Ashley TMS number 35106001111.04 acres. Mr. Morgan?
I'll be handling these.
Oh, sorry.
No worries.
No, good. It's good to have you up here.
Great to see you. All of these are single family residences, but I'm happy to go through them really quickly. This first one is in Washington Park subdivision. 2132 Edisto Avenue over in James Island, Riverland, Golf View. And then we have 2452 Lantern Street in Myrtle Grove, also single family. And finally, a portion of this property, which should have always been all in the city, but we're getting it all on the same page now. 1429 Alma Street. This is in the Grant Hill area. And that's our final zoning for this time. And yes, you can take these all together as they're all SR1. That's all.
Okay, and you support all of that, correct? City staff supports all of it.
Yep, in favor.
Would anyone like to be heard on any of these items 2 through 5 of zoning? If not, it goes to the public aspect, commission members. So motion by Mr. Lassane to approve 2 through 5.
Yes, sir.
By Ms. Joyce is second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone in opposition? That's 6 in favor, not opposed. Next we have presentation. Ashley Forest and area character appraisal. Kenneth Maralda. Mr. Maralda, it's always good to have you here. You do great work. And we appreciate your information. And you go lead off.
Yes, sir. So good to see you all again. I'm Eric Pullman, West Ashley Coordinator with City of Charleston. I just want to do the brief introduction to this. So this is another one of our area character appraisals that Kenneth Maralda of the West Ashley Revitalization Commission has helped here. I believe 3 of these now at this point, Avondale, Magnolia, and now Ashley Forest. And these come right out of Plan West Ashley, where in Plan West Ashley, some of the community vision was to preserve neighborhood character. There was this desire for representing the community with its unique neighborhood character for every area. And Mr. Maralda has helped us move these along. These are going to, in the near future, help us out. We are currently going through with the old Windermere Neighborhood Association, using their area character appraisal to figure out how do we do some form of light area preservation, nothing as stringent as the Board of Architectural Review, but something that will still help keep the area looking and feeling the way it was
Does that deal
designed.
with demolition and things like that?
Yes, sir. So this is just another book that will help us in the future when it does come to preservation or any type of historic need in this area. That is just my lead in.
Thank you, sir. Always good to see you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Kenneth Maralda, and I have served on the West Ashley Revitalization Commission. And this project was completed through West Ashley Connects as a third in the series. We have an intern with us tonight, Olivia Diamond, who did majority of the data collection and some of the diagramming. And so what we decided to do is I'm going to begin the presentation, and she's going to take over and explain some of the diagrams that she completed. And then at the end, I'll return up here and review the findings at the end, conclusion. So the introduction, which is on page 4, do I have a clicker? You're gonna click it.
I can click if you want to tell me when to click it. Yeah.
So page 4, just the introduction, just explains the scope of the project again and acknowledges the contributions of West Ashley historians Ina Boodle, Diane Hamilton, Grant Michaud, Don Jacobs, Charlie Smith, as well as the direct contributor to this project, Teresa Padstrom, myself, James Ward, one of our board members, Olivia, who's here tonight, Ed Kronsberg, who's one of our board members, and of course, Eric Pullman. We move on to page 6. We just broke down the distinction between the Ashley Forest neighborhood and Avondale Point. because Ashley Forest does contribute all of its commercial parcels to Avondale Point. Of course, extremely popular. Many of those restaurants that we all love are technically within Ashley Forest. So this just explains that distinction. And then moving to page 9. When we completed the Avondale one, we created a chronology of the history of that land going from 1670 through present, and much of that history is shared with Ashley Forest. It was the same plantation. The fields that became Ashley Forest were just from the same Weimar plantation. So from 1670 to 1930, the history is the same. We can skip to page 13, which will show 2 plots side by side, 2 plat surveys. One is prior to the subdivision, and then one is the original subdivision plat that was created by J.C. Long in 1931. And so that's when he purchased 30.7 acres. At that time, it was just used for farming. It was a blacksmith shop, a few other little cottages, and the remains of an old powder keg that we believe is from the Civil War powder magazine. Next page of 14 is a memory map of the plantation. In the Avondale presentation, we highlighted things, the sites within Avondale, but now we've expanded on the ones that are actually within Ashley Forest. So we talked a little bit about the powder magazine, the post office, which is still there. So the second post office building, first one was in Avondale, the second one's in Ashley Forest. And so.
Remember one in Avondale, that's the, right in that shopping center, correct?
The one in Avondale was where the bank is now on the other side of Gerald's Tires. That was where the first one was located. This one, the second one, is located behind Highfalutin Coffee and.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's something.
Yeah,
Thank you.
with the large glass windows. Yes, those purpose built as.
And there used to be a post office on my, where it was Piggly Wiggly on St. Andrews Boulevard. I think that was the post office at one time, where the cross seed was. Anyway, I'm sorry, I just had to order.
Beginning on page 18, we decided to dig into the civic organizations in the neighborhood, and in particular because they advocated for improvements before the city of Charleston had begun annexing in West Ashley, and notably sewer improvements. And if you look back in time, there were some pretty notable historical figures like Senator Oliver Wallace, who lived out there, and musicians who were prominent in the Charleston entertainment scene in the 1920s and 30s lived in that area. Now, it had a reputation for being rural, but there were people who were pretty noteworthy living out there at the time, and we just wanted to highlight that. Now I'd like to invite Olivia up here to walk you through some of the diagrams that she did.
Hi, I'm Olivia Diamond. Again, I'm an intern for West Ashley Connects.
Can you talk just a little bit?
I'm
Thank
Olivia Diamond. I'm an intern for West Ashley Connects. I'm a senior at CFC. So if you go to page 26. So this is a street section we did for Magnolia Road, since it's the major road in the neighborhood. It's one of the oldest roads in Charleston County. We went out there with each of the laser distance measure, and we measured each of the sections you can see in the diagram at the bottom. There's the grass area, and there's a sidewalk, and then another grass area, and then the driving lanes, a drainage ditch, and then another grass area on the other side. And then on the next page, there's another street section of right in the neighborhood. 35. This is some of the ages of the structures in the actual neighborhood. So this is the neighborhood itself, and each of the colors are different structures on each individual parcel. We used the Charleston County tax records to find this information. We found that majority of the structures in the neighborhood were from the 40s and 50s were the second most. Yes, and then we also found data for like garages, utility sheds. Not all of them had data, but we included what we could find for that. You can do the next page. And this is the missing middle, which is it's basically when a structure has multiple units, but it's the size of what a single family home would be. So this is like things like finished rooms over garages, attic apartments, garage apartments, accessory units, which is like a separate structure on the same parcel of land that has like a kitchen and a bathroom, duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, things like that. This area dates back to the 50s and 60s. And at the bottom right here, you can see an example of a newspaper advertisement, which is promoting it as attractive and desirable for that.
$5 a month.
You will ever see that again.
Jimmy's family used to own those for that price.
This is another piece of information we collected at the height of the structures, which includes like the number of stories. 3/4 of the houses in the structures in the neighborhood are 1 story, with a little bit being 2 stories, nothing above that. There are a few vacant parcels that we added the information for. Same thing for the age, where we included the data we could of the like garages, utility sheds, carports, that kind of thing. I can do the next page. Similar here, talking about lot coverage, mostly 10 to 20% lot coverage, a little over half. And then you can do the next page. This is units per parcel. Again, mostly almost 87% 1 unit. There are a few 2 units. Anything over 3 units, it was just 1 apartment complex. I think it had 12 units on that one, but overall just 1 unit. That was it. And then if you flip through, there's other graphs and stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
So the last page we will review is page 52, which is conclusions and historical trends. The Ashley Forest neighborhood reflects a historical trend of agricultural to suburban land development, in which former farms and plantations were converted to residential uses in the post-war era. This is not a surprise to anyone, but it's just to explain that that's how this neighborhood fits into the trends that we already know. Ashley Forest has become increasingly denser over time, with a handful of small structures on a single 30-acre parcel in 1930 to almost 170 structures within the same geographic area as of 2024. Density is increasing with the conversion of garages into dwellings. Only 15.2% of structures date to the neighborhood's first decade of development, which is 1930 to 1939. I'm sure we can surmise that part of that is because it was the Great Depression and building may not have been easy. But the majority of structures were built during the neighborhood's second decade, 1940 to 1949. And missing middle can be found in 8.9% of properties in Ashley Forest. It often dates to the 1950s and 60s. 201 Hickory Street, which was built in 1945, it has a second unit that was originally a garage built in 1955, which now has its own address on Audubon Avenue. So I just selected that one as an example because if you drive by it, it's very, very clear what the story is. And then similarly, the townhouses on Tall Oak Avenue were constructed in the 60s. Jurisdictional boundaries have changed considerably since annexation began. Molly's had a little bit of a hand in doing that. But Ashley Forest, I think, is one of the neighborhoods that still has the most parcels in the county. Maybe that will change in time.
A large percent, the biggest percents in the city,
In the county. So if you look at the neighborhoods and which ones have a large percentage of county, I believe
that's your target market.
That's right.
Unlike many of the surrounding neighborhoods, such as Avondale, Magnolia, Maryville, Ashtabula, and Moreland, Ashley Forest does not have, nor has it ever had, a planned green space. I found this particularly interesting because all of the other neighborhoods that we've studied had a planned green space in the center of it, and this one did not. The city plan, the Charleston City Plan for 2021 did not project for a green space, so perhaps there won't be in the future either. The combined location of the commercial parcels at the intersection of Savannah Highway and Magnolia Road, the former bus stop along Magnolia Road, and the multifamily housing along Magnolia Road serve as an example of radial density. And the concept of radial density is basically you start with a node in the middle and spiral outwards, you're most dense in the center, and then least dense as you go outward. And I don't believe that this was an intentional creation. I don't think anyone specifically wanted to create radial density in this area, but I think it shows that it's a natural planning process that they were trying to create a node there. And unfortunately, the bus stop doesn't work anymore, but those types of planning practices yield the greatest possible cumulative benefits. So having denser housing next to transit, next to commercial, reduces the number of trips everyone has to take per day. Most of the lots in Ashley Forest are 0.14 acres, which fits.
0.14 acres.
Yes,
Those you-
yes, 0.14 acres.
Wow.
And that actually fits perfectly in line with the trend in lot size increase over time. So the smallest lot sizes we've observed were in Maryville, Ashleyville. Those are 50 by 100 or 0.11 acres. Yes. The ones, Maryville, Ashleyville, 0.11 acres. And then chronologically in time came Ashley Forest with 0.14 acres. And then you have Avondale, which is 0.26 acres. And so you can see the lot sizes kind of grow as our planning practices and our social expectations of land evolve. So, that's all for the conclusions. Is there anything that I can answer for you guys?
Let me ask you, can you tell me, and I ride over there all the time, and I think you're saying most of the properties in the county, it's amazing what those houses are going for. You have what an average amount would be? I know they range. I mean, it's amazing.
They range. I know a little bit about it, not from this project, but from buying my own home, which I just did a couple months ago.
You live over there?
I used to live in Concord,
Okay.
and I just bought a house in Avenue of Oaks, right off Fifth Avenue.
Uh-huh.
So I just moved about a month and a half ago. But prior to that, I spent a very long time looking at houses, home prices, and what they were going for. And most of those houses, they are in 5s, 6s, and 7s, and that's for very small lots. And one of the things that I've noticed living there and driving by every day is some of the houses that we even studied in this study have been demolished already for construction of new homes. And most of those are in the county. But what it's showing, what I believe it shows, is that our expectations of our homes has evolved over time. We don't want houses anymore that are 3-bed, 1-bath with a little living room and a little kitchen. It's not what people want. If they're going to pay the price that the land value demands to live in this area, they want more than that. And as a result, a lot of these houses are being demolished. And there's several on Magnolia Road now. There's several in Carolina Terrace right across the street.
Amazing.
So the value of the land seems to be more than the value of the structure on them at this point.
It's amazing, truly amazing.
Yes.
What can we do, and I'll let other commission members ask, what can we do in this area and some of the others West Ashley reported on to help preserve? I know you bring things forward sometimes.
Yes. Well, to preserve the character, what I would hope to see is some kind of regulation preventing demolition without a review based on age. So
Is that one of the biggest problems right now?
I believe it is. So at the corner of Sycamore and Magnolia, there was a brick house. You guys probably saw in the news that was
I
demolished.
saw that. It's gonna be 3 houses.
It's going to be 3 houses.
Yeah.
The developer of those 3 houses actually built 3 of the houses in Ashley Forest at the corner of Live Oak and Magnolia.
I think Christopher told me that was 3 tax maps. That was always 3 lots. Yeah.
Yeah, so it had 1 church on it, and then the one on Sycamore and Magnolia also had 3 lots. And one of them was too small to build on, but there was some documentation that there's a Confederate earthwork on the property, and they were allowed to blow through it with a bulldozer to create a driveway. And things like that, in my opinion, erode the historic character. it's well known that this was a remnant of the Civil War, and that should be documented before people run bulldozers through it. So I understand the value of land. I understand we need to increase density. I'm not against doing that. You know, there was one house on the site. We need more housing, put 2 more houses. But we can do that in a way that respects the character of the neighborhood, so. it needs
And
to
you
be
may not know
balanced.
the answer to this. That house that was bulldozed is now gonna be 3 tax maps. How much did they pay for that house to bulldoze it? Do you know?
500 and change, and I know that because
I thought it was a pretty nice house.
it was a pretty nice house. I tried to buy it. But I was one day too late. They had already gone under contract for it.
Okay.
So when I started looking for houses, it was last year, and I actually wanted to buy that one and live there. And I
So they bought that for the dirt, obviously.
yes, and they bought it the day it went on the market. So, yeah.
Amazing, just amazing. Commission members, questions, comments? No, I appreciate your work. You do a wonderful job with all that.
Thank you, sir.
Ms. Jacobs, go ahead. Anybody?
Speak about this?
Yes, ma'am, please. If you didn't, I'd be concerned.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the Planning Commission. I'm Donna Jacobs. I live in Burns Downs, and I assisted with this ACA as well as the other with the historic background. But I'm here today because I served on the West Ashley Revitalization Commission when we were putting together Plan West Ashley. And as Mr. Pullman introduced this to you, what he didn't say was that we had 30,000 residents engaged that gave us that perspective of come over here and help us revitalize, but respect us. Look at what our community is, and let's just not bulldoze and start something new. And what Mr. Maralda has been able to afford us now are these area character appraisals, free of charge, folks. We paid for these for Burns Downs, Pullman, Namir, and Canyon Borough, Elliott Borough. But these are going to be guiding documents for what the movement is now over in West Ashley. There's some movement now, as Mr. Pullman alluded to build an ordinance to try to protect some of these historic neighborhoods, light ordinances. We don't want a heavy footprint, but at the same time, we don't want to come through and just bulldoze and do whatever. So what I'm here tonight is to respectfully ask the commission to accept this document as a resource like we did for Magnolia and for Avondale. It's not a policy document, it's a resource document. So if the commission would do that, then staff could have it as a resource as we move forward with some of these initiatives in West Ashley. We recently put together a forum called Preservation and Progress, where we spoke about the impact of the two together and the push-pull on that and how we can balance that and move forward. There's a group of advocacy people waiting for to try to help with this old Windermere ordinance. So I respectfully ask that y'all do that, and thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, ma'am. You know, it's amazing how the cities had to change things in these older neighborhoods. And Mr. Bailey lives over in the Crescent. We had many years ago, Mr. Morgan remembers, Ms. Jacobs may remember, I know Ms. Lempis, she would remember. We had the lot sizes so big in the side, and Mr. Huff came forward. He had a piece of property in the Crescent, Charles Huff, I believe, I think I got it right. And he wanted to subdivide it. And the neighbors were up in arms because they said he wanted to divide it to 2. The lot was actually big enough to have 3. He could have 3. He could have put 3 houses on that property. And I remember Mr. Regan, may he rest in peace, was city attorney, said, y'all got to pass this. It meets the guidelines. You know, Mr. We talked about subdivision request. If you don't, it's just a lawsuit. But we didn't pass. We didn't pass. We failed. So Regan said, you got us another lawsuit last night. That's okay. But the city then came up with an ordinance in older neighborhoods. Mayor Riley directed the city.
Is that what it's called? Yeah.
So in older neighborhoods, and I can't remember the definition. Is it older neighborhoods anyway?
Well, there are a couple of things we have. We have the lot averaging. So if you're subdividing lots, you have to do the average of the lots or in the immediate vicinity of your lot. So that helps keep them, you know, of a comparable size. But then we do have that SR8, which is, do you remember the minimum lot size in that?
I think in the Crescent, almost every one of those lots could have been divided at least by 2, if not 3.
They're basically a half acre or more.
Yeah. So yeah, and I was concerned about that.
I wouldn't mind selling that. 2 lots on my lot.
Don't get any ideas. Please, Mr. Bailey.
I have just a question. I really struggle with the idea that something that's 50 years old is worth keeping just because it's 50 years old. I would love to hear some perspective on better ways to approach that. Because I think we have a lot of 50-year-old garbage.
50 years isn't that old even.
No, I'm about to be 50.
Mr.
I wish I could remember that.
The standard for years is set by the National Trust for the historic sites. That's where the standards started, but I agree with you. And even internally in our design review board for commercial corridors in all of the areas outside of the purview of BER, it's the 50-year because it's a national standard. So what happens is, it's just got to be acknowledged and looked at, because not every 50-year-old building is. I'll give you an example. When the DRB was supposed to demolish the Mexican restaurant on Savannah Highway, that became the Finn Wash. That was originally a McDonald's, which is just a square cinder block building, but it was about 55 or 60 years old. So they called me up to come in because they're required to look at that. Just because something is 50 years old does not mean that we're gonna run out and save everything, because the same thing has happened in other buildings where they just need the information. But I think it's important that you have a standard for review, just so you don't get arbitrary about it. So I agree with you in the sense that we don't need to save everything over 50 years, because right now the Citadel Mall is more than 50 years old. But that doesn't mean we're all going, it's 1972 when it was built. So we don't die on every hill of 50 years, but I think we need to have benchmarks for respect and work it into the review process somehow. Otherwise we get caught, because there was a house that came before the commission that sits on St. Andrews Boulevard that they were asking for movement into I think an R designation. They wanted to put a child care center there, and and the neighborhood came out, they were worried about child care center. But what's most interesting about that building, because Mr. Ronaldo and I worked on that, is that was the home of Ivy Peak. Mr. Peak was very prominent in the building of several neighborhoods over here. He ran the West Ashley Organization, Mr. Means. He built Avondale. He was served in the representative. Nobody knew that until we started digging into the home, and the home is actually very well constructed also. So I think we miss some things if we're not at least cautious, but it doesn't mean we have to say everything. I think it's just a benchmark that we work around with the right balance of perspective.
I just feel like it ends up being a little bit of a crutch sometimes. It's the easy button to say no. And I think you start to potentially erode the credibility of the guideline when structures like Citadel Mall fall into the historic category, so.
I would say that, just to echo Ms. Jacobs, really the 50 years more of just the qualifier. It's where it says you need to take longer than a 10-second look to see whether or not it should be demolished. Take a full, 5 minutes, just to see, is there any
Maybe
value in it? And I mean, you're not wrong that especially most things that have been built 74, which is what currently the 50-year mark is at, we're probably not going to be, historic designation on it, but it does give us pause to figure out, is this important to the community? Does it represent a important person that lived here? Is it relevant to a specific architecture style that was important to this area that has been lost previously? Things of that nature is what it helps us with, but in general, it helps us keep everyone on the same level for what starts that second one.
Other questions, comments, commission members?
I'd like to make a motion to accept the report as Ms. Jacobs suggested.
I've got one question.
Yes, sir. Wait, Mr.
So this is an incredible level of detail and just getting me up to speed. How many of these character appraisals have been done for neighborhoods in West Ashley?
So we've completed 3 of them, Avondale, Magnolia, and now Ashley Forest. Previously, Old Windermere and Burns Downs had also had them done, but that was a separate endeavor. Those were hired consultants.
Where are those housed? Are those like the neighborhood own them? Who's
So
there?
they're housed in the planning office. We have hard copies and digital.
Okay, so if you want to go online, you could find them all.
Yes,
And were these previous characterizations also accepted by the city?
Yes, sir.
I think the city commission.
Yes, sir.
And are there, is Wagner Terrace coming down?
I believe Wagner
Yes.
Terrace does have one now.
And Kenneborough.
The Central has
Yes.
one.
Okay.
I don't know if those have been presented to you.
They were, the Canberra, Ellenborough, and those were actually city council
Yeah.
commission those. So these are done independently, technically free of charge. So they're brought here just for visitors.
Okay, that's the history I was looking for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Any other questions, comments? There's a motion by Mr. Lassane that we accept the report. Is there a second to the motion? Mr. Bailey? Motion by Mr. Lassane, second by Mr. Bailey. All in favor signify by saying aye. Anyone opposed? That's 6 in favor, none opposed. Thank you again for all of your work, good work, and we appreciate it. Mr. Morgan, staff updates. Can you give us a glimpse of January? You told me January is going to be a busy month.
So I think we'll have several cases before you all, but we'll also do an update on where we are with our zoning